Welcome our fourth annual LeanLaw Accounting Pro Meetup. This is really exciting for us to continue to do this, to get in the rhythm of this. We pushed it back a little this month because of tax season. I don't think anyone wanted to be talking to us on the 16th, which is our normal day, so we said, let's just push it out. Today's topic is onboarding. It's something that has been on our minds here at LeanLaw. I've been working with my co-panelists, who I'll introduce in a second, on this subject specifically, so we wanted to break out and have a conversation around that today. Because, as I mentioned, this is a webinar format, it's not like we're all, with you guys. I appreciate it. Feel free to have a conversation with us. It's not meant to be a one-way webinar, but at the same time, if there's noise in your background or something like that, let's make sure that you're respectful of other folks. So our agenda for today, well, our panelists. So Lynda Artesani is here from Artesani Bookkeeping, Brandy, Derrick from Legalese, and Sarah Prevost from Vintage Lab. I have been working closely with all three of these, and I feel like it's secondhand to have a conversation with them around onboarding. And I'm very grateful for their energy, enthusiasm, intellect, everything that they bring into the LeanLaw community. So I'm excited to have the four of us talking today, and they can speak to their respective businesses. I've mentioned all of them before. The agenda for today, and I'm going to try my best to keep it right under the 50-minute mark. I want to just cover a few things really quickly before we get into the main subject matter of onboarding. So I want to do a LeanLaw product update, an LAP. When I say LAP, I mean a LeanLaw Accounting Pro accounting, LAP Accounting Pro updates. That's a little redundant. A little updates there and some happenings. And then I want to briefly show you some slides on QBlue. That's a product LeanLaw is introducing in the market later this year. Lynda, just a quick hello from you and introduce yourself to the group, please.
Hi, I'm Lynda Artesani, Artesani Bookkeeping. I've been doing this, well, my business is going to be 20 years old this June. And I'm actually working on a big couple of projects with Sarah Prevost. That's, they are from Vintage Labs. And we love working with LeanLaw and with attorneys and law firms. And it's great. It's been a great partnership.
Brandy, can you introduce yourself? Brandy, you're muted.
I thought I was clicking the unmute button, but I was not. I was clicking some other button. But I'm Brandy Derrick. I'm with Legalese Bookkeeping. I've been doing bookkeeping since 2001, but I just opened my practice in about 3 years ago. And I focus solely on helping attorneys with their bookkeeping. And
Miss Sarah, can you say hello to everyone?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Sarah Prevost. I'm in Portland, Oregon, so I'm on the West Coast. I am similar to Brandy, where I've been doing this a while, but just did my practice about 3 years ago as well, and fell in love with legal. If you can honestly say that, I can say that, like Brandy. And I enjoy collaboration and working on different projects. So thank you, everybody. It's fun to be here.
Okay. Quick update on our LeanLaw product. So we've added just recently reports. And what we did with reports is we've done a lot of overhauling our reports in the last probably 3 months, but specifically one item to be paying attention to is that now you can look at a report. Let's see if I can pull it up really quickly. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see that I just brought up reports?
Yep. Great.
So when we look at client matter reports now, you can begin to see some bigger details about what was billable. I did the wrong one. Hold on a second. I'm new to this one too. So it's revenue by client matter. I think this is the one. So now we have this function where we can show detail. This was a big gap that people were asking for, that in a particular period this year, we can show or not show details. So when we look at that, what was billed, we can actually see the components of it and differentiate between any fixed fees, any expenses, and any hours billed for that month. Now the collected doesn't necessarily tie to the bill. That just means it was collected for that particular client over that particular period. And then of course, trust and receivables. So that's a big piece that we added. And there's also a few other places you can see some of those things, like in period reports, you could say, for all my clients, show me the billable expenses. And that allows you to see where you might be trending for expenses on a particular period. So we're trying to chunk out that data so there's some things specific there. We'll also have some greater details around originating attorney reports. So we'll see that. Coming soon is, we're excited about this, practice area tracking and reports. People have asked for it. Something that was trying to be done in classing. The idea that, hey, I do some real estate work and maybe I do some, some real estate litigation work and some transaction work. And at a matter level, we can go in now, tag those practice areas and run financial reports. That's useful for a firm looking at sort of the topology of where their practice is and maybe the profitability. So you can kind of be thinking about, hey, if we can look at practice areas, we can start to say where they're making, what's more efficient for the attorney. It also carries into insurance. Sometimes like for malpractice insurance, you want to be able to segment, hey, this body of work needs this for malpractice. We're adding the function to create an administrative fee. Client asked for that. On the horizon is going to be some workflow enhancements for contingency. Those are like personal injury, the idea where the attorney's taking a stake in the matter by a percentage. Trust workflow is right on the horizon, and new mobile app. That's something really needed. I bring to this attention what clients are asking for, and it's kind of moving up my list of what I think we should do, down the horizon, which is Office 365 integration and payments integration, specifically for trust retainers. And if you have a question or anything, ask it through the chat or the question function, or just holler as well. So let's go into the next one. For our LeanLaw Accounting Pros, 3 points here. First, we're in LeanLaw. I'm not sure everyone's aware of this, but in our one of the focuses of the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program is to connect you folks with attorneys. Sometimes that's LeanLaw making an introduction. Sometimes, and what we hope to happen is that we're going to actually have people be able to find us through a directory, kind of similar to that kind of similar to the QuickBooks Pro Advisor directory. But what we've done is we've enhanced this page because we thought the first one wasn't great. And this is going to be a page for each Pro Advisor or Pro Advisor firm. And it's interesting because it will come up in a search query. So you can see that it's branded much more differently, and we're going to ask questions that we think are meaningful, like, what kind of services do you do? What size firm do you work with? Is there any specific types of practices you work with? And then some statements. And what we're hoping is that you really can begin to develop a profile where people can actually contact you directly. So we're going to be sending, if you're already in our program and have this profile up, we're going to be sending you a new form to fill out, and I can't urge you enough to take the time and be thoughtful about your answers. Your prospective clients might be reading them, and so it is important. We're also, we can't officially announce it because Intuit hasn't told us that we can officially announce it, but we were sought out and asked to be part of something called the Intuit's Developer Success Program. And this was a huge win for LeanLaw in that now we're having a voice in how QuickBooks is thinking about talking to attorneys. You'll see our content on Firm of the Future. You'll see our content on the QuickBooks page for lawyers. And we're just starting that relationship, but it's very exciting for LeanLaw. And what you'll see out of it is a lot of content. Last point here is we'll be doing some webinars again with Lauren Fogelman. The subject, there'll be 3 webinars all about pricing strategy. Lauren's a business coach specifically focused towards the accounting community. And her area of expertise is helping set pricing, value, and productization. So we'll see a series of 3 webinars along that. Okay, I'm almost done. QGlue update. So sorry, I'm trying to get through my deck here. So these are real screens from QGlue. QGlue is LeanLaw's product, second product that's going to be announced, or I should say User First Software, which is the parent company of LeanLaw. Its mission is to Karen Shorts just asked if we're attending Scaling New Heights. Yes, we expect to, and we're also expecting to have a booth. So QGlue focus is to take our intellect and our technology smarts related to in QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online integration and bring it into other legal platforms. The first platform is Clio, and you're looking at live screens. And this first screen, what I want you to see is the idea that we have this idea of accounts and transactions. We can look at what sort of the setup that we have in Clio. We have an account bank. There's $5,100 in it. In QuickBooks, we see a trust account. There's $5,200 and there's $5,200. So you're beginning to see an integrated snapshot of what is happening in QuickBooks and what's happening in Clio, and being able to see transactions. If we drill down, we can actually get in and see some filters here, like let's look at transactions both in Clio and QuickBooks. Let's look at deposits, look at checks, let's look over a certain date period, and you begin to see some actual live transactions that you can begin to manage. And there's actually LeanLaw is communicating transactions back and forth between the two applications. What we're really excited about is this. So one of the shortcomings in Clio and looking at trust accounts is that there's no ledger. You can't see where you're at. So we can actually put in a QGlue link inside the Clio application that would launch the user, think now the attorney trying to understand where their trust accounts are, into a page, and I pulled this off of LeanLaw, but it'll be something similar, where they can see bank balances, liability balances, and specific trust ledger balances. So we're really excited about that. The next phase of QGlue is that our CTO, Fred Willerup, is going to go out and begin to interview our accounting community and get feedback on the product itself. That's excited. If anyone wants to be part of that process of giving us feedback, please let us know, and we're happy to include you.
I'm ready.
Sarah, you're already on the list. So let's talk about onboarding. Let's get to the heart of it. Any questions by first anyone about QGlue and or the LAP program?
That picture that you showed of Brandy, is that how the pages are supposed to look? Because I looked at mine and it doesn't look like that.
This is the page. This is what it's going. Sorry, I'm just trying. That's what it's going.
It's not available yet.
We took Brandy's and mocked it up, and that looks a lot better than what's in there now. Yeah. And if you actually search, you'll start to see it picked up in search. It's really quite exciting to see that. Okay, let's get to the heart of it. So I'm just going to overview it, and then Lynda, you can. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Okay. We had a strategy conversation yesterday, and we talked about this idea of onboarding. And I broke it up into a series of 8 steps, phases, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to walk through so everyone's on the same page of what these are. And then we're going to do some polls, because I want to get a little feedback from the group. And then I'm going to ask Lynda to share her screen, because she's got a little mini presentation. So step 1 is sort of the bidding and engagement. And the reason I brought this up, and Lynda said, hey, that's not really part of onboarding. I brought it up because we struggle so much in regards to making sure that we bid and we get the engagement right. And we struggle there. So I wanted to at least have a brief conversation about some of the tactics there. The next step is sort of setting the expectations. We won the client, but now we have to set expectations and tools and whatnot. Third, we clarified as access. So there's this back and forth about assets and specific tasks that need to happen to move forward. The fourth phase is the chart of accounts. And there's lots of nuances to this, but the idea that you got to get the chart of accounts correct. The backside of that, step 5, is really the cleanup of the data. It's looking at what data you want to bring into the environment. Now, sometimes, it's a smaller amount, sometimes it's a larger amount. The 6th step, and this is specific to LeanLaw, let's look at the billing data and the migration and prep of that. That's, you know, who the billing information is, who the clients are, and there's a lot of nuances within lien law of what that data is that gets into the vernacular of legal billing in particular. Next is training and coaching, and last is validation. So those are the stages we see it. You know, that's our idea. We're not thinking it's not that there's an exact science to all of this, but that's what we came up. So before we jump into the world, we're going to do a quick poll. So the first poll is describe your competency in onboarding clients. So everyone, there should be ability to poll, ask you how you feel. It's anonymous. So we're going to have this open for like 30 seconds, and we're halfway there. So quick, everyone. It's so much fun to do these. I'm way more casual in these than other webinars I do because I feel like I know most of everyone. So, all right, we're almost there. All right. Let's see, we're at almost at 70% people. Okay, the majority of you said, I am new to this and need to create my process. But a good percentage of you said your process is down, but you're looking for new tricks of the trade. And then a small percentage, 18%, said that they're old school. Now, I can share the results with the group. And then there's another poll that I want to do. Relaunch polling. So that's not the one I want. Sorry, I'm still new to Zoom. All right, I want to know if you have what law firm clients you have. So I want to know where that is in the focus of your practice. And again, this is 20 seconds. All right, so we're going to end this, and only 10% of you, one person, said it's the focus of your practice. That's probably Brandy. I have one or two, but want more, which is 30%, and 60% of you said, I don't have any law clients, that's why I'm here. All right, let's move forward. Lynda, you take it. Take the con.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to start the presentation that I created yesterday and had a little input with the ladies. So we're going to just see, and we'll get into the, I wanted to make this because I want you to all to see my process, and Sarah and I have very similar processes, similar tools, which is kind of partially by chance and then partially because Sarah actually turned me on to a part of it. So I'm just going to slide down here. You can see who's involved, and then we'll get into getting into my tool for CRM, so customer relationship management. And I start there, and like I said to Jonathan, for me, onboarding to me is once the contract is signed, and I start out with a quote, and then if the client accepts the quote, then it becomes a letter of engagement, and which is the contract. And then once that's signed, then this cues me into doing this. So I have a couple of ways with clients. Sometimes they start out as a cleanup client and then they become an ongoing client. And then sometimes they just straight up come in as ongoing. So with 17 Hats, I've actually created a workflow, and I'm going to bring it up here on the board so you can see it. So the first part is once they've signed the contract, I have an email that goes out, and it actually explains the tools that I use in my practice, and it welcomes them. Thank you for having confidence in me. A letter like that, just to say thank you, basically, for signing up. And then the next step is, of course, I'm going to get paid. So I send out a document that actually Sarah and I kind of worked on together where they can fill it out. I used to do it manually, where I had a PDF that they would fill out and send back to me, which did not work well because sometimes people don't write the numbers well, and this works much better. In 17 Hats, you can make a questionnaire, and then the questionnaire they can fill out, then it gets sent back. It's secure. And then what we're doing, because we had a conversation with Intuit and our team that we have that we buy the products QuickBooks from, and they actually said to use it in 17 Hats to print the document, delete the sensitive data, and then I put it in my the next piece that you'll see, which is working with the project management, which is secure, which is Lisio. And then I have a team meeting with whoever is on the team that's going to be working with the client to go over the nuances of the job. Sometimes with a cleanup job, they've already got the knowledge of it, but if it's an ongoing customer that signs up and we have to do back work, a lot of times by April, I'm going back to get the tax return from them and starting from the tax return part and going forward from there and basically tying the books to the tax return. I can tell you from my personal experience over the years, 99% of the clients that come to me, their books don't match their tax return. The CPA does the work. I don't know what they do. They never give you the journal entries at the year end. And I want to make sure my numbers match, because if I don't have that, I can't analyze the data properly with the client to figure out what they need to do to move forward for that more advisory level of work that I would rather do with my clients. And then if the back work starts, the back work starts first, and then we'll send an email to the client letting them know, boom, we're going to start now working on the regular work. So once that happens, we'll have another team meeting, see how it went with the back work, and then they go forward with it. And then eventually we'll do a client review meeting, either at month end, some clients quarterly. Sometimes they end up doing the meeting alone because they're all excited in the beginning and then they don't have time for a meeting. So sometimes I actually use Loom to record and go through the file if we have any questions, send them a list of questions. I'm doing that all on the work management platform, which is Lisio. So I'm going to slide to the next slide.
So when did you, Lynda, when did you start using that CRM tool?
That's my first tool that I found. Actually, Seth David in 2016 recommended it, and I started using it right away. And I've had it that long, and it's rare to have an app that you stick with that long. And
what's it cost?
It's cheap. I think I bought it $250, and I keep buying it every time it goes on sale. Like the day after Thanksgiving, they'll do a Black Friday sale, and they slash the price so you can buy it again. And I'm paid up till 2023 right now.
What's the name of it again?
It's called 17 Hats. And the other bonus of it is you can actually, like my husband and I have a real estate company too. So I can add those companies on to that 17 Hats for free. So they get an extra, I can add as many companies as I want on it. So it's pretty cool. And I use that for real estate and automate a lot of processes in the real estate section.
I want to ping it to the group. Is it 17 APPS?
17 Hats.
Oh, 17 Hats, sorry.
Yep, 17 Hats, HATS, right there.
Okay, thanks.
And then I'm going to pass the baton to Sarah so she can start talking about the work management tool we use.
Okay, well that was funny, Lynda, because that's when I started using 17
Oh
Hats.
my gosh, that's so
It was
cool.
the first app I purchased.
Yeah,
I love it. So Lisio is a fairly, it's been around, but it's a fairly new product to me. I've started using it at the beginning of the year, beginning of tax year. Not that I do taxes, but it was a madness. And it is a program, think of it more as your client management conversation, your secure documents. So similar product to ShareFile with way more features and goodness and enriched value to it. It is the place that we do sole communication with our clients. I no longer, once you're invited to Lisio, you are off email. We are no longer in email. We are solely working inside this platform for communication. And so once we're onboarding, it is part of the invitation. There's a welcome message that I'll send you, let you know how it works. And if you do an oops once in a while as a client and you send me a message via email, I will refer to Lisio and respond back in Lisio with your message so that I can keep you going back to that. And the reason for that is there are so many opportunities for sending me some critical information that I don't want you to send and you just accidentally do. That happens so often. And also Lisio just works really nicely. It can text message you when I've sent you a message. I can create a task of things that I need from you. It can house all of our login information for our different apps and websites that we need sensitive data. And it also houses all of our files and so forth. And so you just have like a complete product for a client facing. So not back of the house. Back of the house, I look to my apps like 17 Hats, and I look to my apps with like say Trello for my back of the house. All my client facing engagement happens in Lisio.
And so are these tools introduced? I mean, they're not really introduced in the engagement. What I defined as this engagement piece, it's that step 2 that you're sort of talking about the process, like, hey, we're going to onboard, or, you know, because you're talking about Lisio, where does that come into play? Is it free?
It's on the
paying you?
front end. Yeah, no, it is actually. What I do on the front end is when we have the first level of engagement, I will send a non-disclosure agreement through 17 Hats and request that we put that in place prior to even doing a file review, anything. It's just we have an NDA in place, and then I will let them know on the onset immediately, I'm going to invite you into a platform where all of our communication is going to go from here on out. And that's because I'm concerned about you sending me files that are secure or requests that I have in order to do a file review. So they sort of do happen on the front end in the initial dialogue. But what comes with it is already this perceived value of like, oh, this is amazing. And most often clients are like, wow, thank you so much for putting me into this. So they really enjoy the process.
Okay, so let's keep going. So let's, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to just clarify that.
And of course, the tools that Brandy and Sarah and I all use is QuickBooks, obviously, and LeanLaw. So I had to give that plug in there because that is part of the tools that we use. And in the perfect world, we like to be in QuickBooks and we like the client to be in LeanLaw, not together. Most of the times that's the way it works. That's what we love about LeanLaw, right? And sometimes we work together in LeanLaw, and then also we get the QuickBooks piece, and we try to keep the client out of QuickBooks as much as possible. So that's that piece. And then we're going to get down here because I know Brandy yesterday gave us a really good story. She talked about her onboarding experience with QuickBooks, converting QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, because you can't really use LeanLaw if you don't move to the cloud. So go for it, Brandy.
Yeah, well, I had that had two separate QuickBooks Desktop files. One was for the trust account and one was for their operating account. But in order to get all the benefits out of LeanLaw, they really need to be combined into one. And so some of the tools that I use to help that, because you can only bring one file over in QuickBooks, then you have to manually enter the rest of the information. So I used, I just had this written down, Z-Access is the tool that I use to import transactions into QuickBooks. And then I also use a tool called Doc Parser, which takes a PDF file and converts it into Excel. So if you're, let's say, looking at old bank statements that you can't import into QuickBooks, and they won't let you do it in Excel, they won't let you download the transactions, then I get the statement PDF and put it in Doc Parser, which then puts it in Excel, which then I can import it using Z-Access into QuickBooks. So
how'd you figure this out? Like, you know, I mean, like, so it was you were presented with a problem. Hey, this, and by the way, guys, it's really common that, especially with smaller firms, where you're seeing the trust ledger tracked in something outside of the accounting application. If they're coming from a desktop environment, for sure, you know, it's really happens a lot because they have the luxury of having multiple companies and they treat the ledger. And there are certainly some assertions that suggest that it is explicitly the right way to keep the trust accounting outside of the general ledger because it's not your money. Thus, why is it on your balance sheet? I think that doesn't always work in real world reality. And what I mean by that is there's kind of two functions. One is that there's one QuickBooks Online, right? And then the second is that it's important relative to the matters and activity that's happening that you see trust balances. So completely separating it from the financials actually is a detriment to the attorney because like in LeanLaw, we can show a real-time trust balance relative to what the work in progress is. And that becomes something really important to them from the attorney's perspective so they can see where they're trending. So my question to you, Brandy, was really like, did you just stumble onto the answer because you had the problem, or did you go to some specific place to get the answer? How did you get through that? Like, I've got two trusts and I found these two different tools.
Well, I have been using Z-Access for years to import invoices into QuickBooks for a client or for my previous employer. I had found them as a tool for that. And then Doc Parser I had come across, I don't know, about a year ago when I had another client that I wanted to put their bank statements into the banking feed, and all they had were PDFs. And I was like, there has to be a way to do this. And actually I used Zapier as well. Zapier is the one that turned me on to Doc Parser, because I was needing to make a QuickBooks, or I was wanting to make a report that QuickBooks wouldn't provide for me, and I wanted to do it automated because my client wanted this report every single day. So I have QuickBooks email me a PDF, and then I send that, then I made a Zap to make that PDF go to Doc Parser, which then there's a Zap that automatically makes that into an Excel sheet and emails it to my client. So I had found out about that about a year ago, I guess, for using it for that.
So what you're saying is that the problem motivated looking for the tool, and that I think the key learning is, and there's a really nice conversation happening in chat, and I'm posting all the tools into the chat for the group. So, but what I'm hearing you say is that the problem instigated the tool, and the tool, there are tools there to mitigate manual work. That's the real bottom line. So you really need to not be doing manual work. So let's talk about the second thing, which is setting expectations. That's something that I think is really critical. We talked about the tools, but I'll start with you, Brandy, in your process. What do you feel are some of the most important aspects of that component, of that stage, which is setting these expectations?
Well, you need to be realistic in your time frame, and I mean, especially, right, we just got done with a tax season, and so people come to you the day before they need their taxes filed and are like, can you get me all of 2008 figured out? That's just not going to happen, right? But I like to let them know, hey, this is how long it's going to take, given that I get responses from you. I'm going to have questions on things. I'm not going to know what everything is. And yes, I do niche in law, and there's certain things, if it comes across, I'm going to instantly know what that is and how it should be categorized. But there's going to be other things I don't know. And if you don't respond back to me, I can't get this done in the time frame that I said that I was going to get it done. And just kind of set them up at the beginning as well, knowing, hey, there's going to be a lot of communication that's going to happen between the first, month or two, where we're going back and forth a lot, and let them know that they can't just release it to me and expect that it's gonna, they don't have to do anything and it's be instantly perfect.
So I think the key there is, I'll talk about it from a LeanLaw standpoint, because when we sign a client, and many times there's an onboarding on the LeanLaw, but then there's also a second half of accounting migration, right? So what we do is start with a cutover date. And that triggers many of the activities that lead up to that date and happen post that date. And what I mean by a cutover date is they're on some system. Because remember, this is in the context of a billing environment plus an accounting environment. So they're on some system, let's just say, time slips. And if the client, I had 2 clients engage me today that I'll have kickoff meetings next week, and I know they're both going to say May 1st. They're going to say June 1st. That's my instinct, which means by June 1st, that sets the cutover date that they will stop using their old time tracking tool, and they will begin to use a LeanLaw environment. What needs to be in place by that cutoff date, and this is what I tell them from an expectation standpoint, is we have to have all the users on the system. We have to have the system set up. And when I mean system, I'm specifically speaking to LeanLaw. We have to have all of the client billing data, not accounts receivables, not accounts payables, not payroll, not the QuickBooks data per se, but who the clients are, what their matters are, who the responsible attorneys are, what the rates are, all of that data so that team can time track. And that has to happen on the first day of the cutover month, so June 1st. New users, they log in, they can start time tracking. The accounting side can follow in most instances, firms are billing on a 30-day cycle. So the first invoicing with the QuickBooks LeanLaw environment typically is going to be 30 days after that cutoff date to 40 days, because they do it in the first 10 days of the following month. So they're taking in the this June 1st cutover date. In July, it's July 4th is a holiday, so they probably wouldn't get their billing done before July 4th. So somewhere between the 5th and the 10th, they'll bill June's time. So that allows the accounting architecture to lag slightly behind in the process. And what happens is, as of June 1st to June 10th, they bill the last period from the old tool. And those become opening balances for the clients moving forward. And then we also capture the trust. So part of the expectation is setting this roadmap up with them and making sure that they can meet the requirements of the accounting team and the LeanLaw team. We had an onboard that we did just this past 2 months where I stopped it. I went to the managing partner and said, we're going to fail. We've got to push off a month, because they were too aggressive. I mean, of course, when we're winning the client, we're like, sure, we can do it. And then, you get into it and they're just not responding fast enough. So fortunately, we pushed off a month and that worked. Anything else on this setting the expectations point before we move on? I want to keep pushing this along. Actually, I'm going to push this along. A little bit about access and task management. Sarah and Lynda, why don't you guys speak to that one?
About access to the...
we had talked about getting the passwords and getting accounts and getting everything set up. That's just an important step, and you talked about the task. Maybe we covered a little bit, but any notes on that step?
It's actually, we use Lisio for that. So we communicate. I'm finding now that I'm using Lisio, a lot of my new clients, it's working like a dream because they don't know any other way to communicate. I set the table right at the beginning of the onboarding, and they're very excited, and I explain to them exactly how important it is to share the tax return there, share the employee stuff if you're setting up payroll. And also with the logins, I need the logins, but I really don't want them emailing me that. Happened to me just recently. Someone emailed me their bank logins. It was a current customer that's been with me for a while, and they'll log into the bank, the answers to the security questions, the username and the password.
Nice.
I wanted to nearly die. So, had to call and say, please change everything. And then we'll go back to using Lisio. And then we had that conversation. And I think he's scared enough now that that won't happen again. But, because you just don't want to be emailing that stuff. And people just get complacent with it. They don't think about the fact that, it's easy just to hit reply. That's why Lisio works, as opposed to like when I use ShareFile. I used to have a ShareFile link, but Lisio works because the communication is all in that one place. So they can just hit reply, and then that's great. And I'll put it in the login if I have to, but I know it's secure there, and that's where I can get a good sleep at night.
Let's jump into the chart of accounts, and I want Sarah, you to lead this. And there's a lot of nuances to the chart of accounts, and I want to make sure that we really give it its due attention. And the reason I remember Sarah using her expressive, it has to be right in architecture. But the chart of accounts is really the holy grail, because what you're charged to do when you're onboarding is to establish the workflows. And you'll hear me preach about this a lot, because if we have the right workflows, and workflows mean where data goes, we get the right data. And if we get the right data, we get accurate reports. And only from accurate reports do we actually get insights that can create efficiencies and value add. And you have to remember that, your, how do I say value add, or your greatest offering to a law firm is to rise out of the commoditized reconciliation and rise into this ability to offer insights, but only with good workflows do you do that. And so the chart of accounts is really critical, because we've all inherited, I'm not even a bookkeeper or an accountant, but I've inherited just ridiculously bad chart of accounts, messy chart of accounts, other tools, because I look at one in particular is Rocket Matter, just slobbers all over the chart of accounts. Just slobbers. That's the only way I could say it. They list all these products and services, all these areas. So let's talk a little bit about that process of helping the client understand that work related to the chart of accounts. Go ahead.
Sure. Typically what you see is sometimes you see a dumping account is what I like to call it. So I'll back up. I'm a foundational structure in my brain. And so I love to build the foundation really strong on the onset. And I'll build in extra accounts that you may not use, but I'm thinking of your future endeavors as you grow. So I'm kind of got your exit in mind a little bit going on in there. So when it comes to the key structure and the foundation, it's your chart of accounts. And the way that I like it to be is simplistic in nature, but intuitive, meaning if your chart of accounts is your legal income is all just dumping into legal income, X, we got a problem. I want to see it come into different areas of expertise, kind of like what we referenced earlier. And similarly with your products and services, I like them to, you can have a little bit more in your products and services. That's the underbelly is what I call when I refer to it with clients. But what you're going to present to a bank, what you're going to present to an auditor is your chart of accounts. And so I like it to be nice and tidy and kind of in a structure that is very intuitive, but also very organized with not just your banks in mind and you in mind, but also your tax professional. Because the last thing you need is your tax professional running around all over your chart of accounts trying to find every single piece to put that tax return. So if you do it right and you're really like solid about it and communicative about it, you will have a very supportive document that in the end actually might save you a bit more because you intuitively understand it at the end of the day. And I like it to kind of give you a glimpse, but if you want to drill in, you can drill in. You just, at the onset, you need to be able to understand what you're looking at and not go, why is this over here and that's over here, and have redundancies or slobber.
We were actually working together with a client, Sarah and I, and it's not a bad practice and what we did was we actually put the chart of accounts that we had for their specific law firm type in an Excel spreadsheet, in a Google sheet.
Yeah,
we might have shared it, yeah, and we and let them approve it. So now there's no, like, we need you to sign off on this, and they added a few and they asked for it somewhere, and actually one of the accounts made them think about something they hadn't thought about, and then they end up going down the road of doing something that they never thought about, where sometimes you don't think about maybe an exit plan with your business or whatever, you know, the insurance for that, and they hadn't thought of that. So they added that in. We had it on there and they kept it, and then they went down to look into that for their business.
For example, it's your key man policy or disability policy is it's a structure in my head operationally that I think is really important and just to have there just as a conversation piece. You may not use it. It's just a conversation, but I loved this step. Here's what you have existing. Here's what we ideally would like you to have. Let's talk about it. Where are your questions? And then we implement it. So yeah.
And what I think it's important is it starts the vernacular and conversation with the client that will lead into a more analytical conversation. You said it brought up, an exit strategy. LeanLaw, just a few points, has some limitations. We're going to build the ability to connect to multiple products and services, which would connect to, on the income side, which could connect to obviously different places in the chart. Where we address it is this practice area, so that you can tag matters by practice area. We address it by revenue by attorney. Sometimes we see people trying to tag income by attorney in the chart of accounts. And our goal is to not try to build everything into the chart of accounts, to build some intelligence into LeanLaw, because then we can add layers and more flexibility that people don't have to go to the chart or go to QuickBooks to get data nuggets that they need. The modern firm wants transparency and real-time information. And because LeanLaw looks across both what's happening, what's yet to be billed, and what's been billed, and what's been collected, we have a sort of unique vantage point as it relates to some critical components of compensation. Now, certainly, there's other nuances in the balance sheet and in the profit and loss that only comes out of QuickBooks, but we handle some of those things internally. And I do think that this discussion on chart and getting a sign off, not like, hey, we can't move forward until you sign off, although that may be some criterion, but that stage is much of making sure that you're going to get out of QuickBooks what the client expects. Brandy, do you have any thoughts on this, or should we jump to the next, which is talking about data cleanup? Okay.
Jump to the next thing.
All right. I'm just trying to rush because we're at 1:45 my time.
Yeah.
So data cleanup, and really I want to talk a little bit about the logistics of this, and it gets into timing, but I think it really comes down to this question is, what data do you, let's just say we're moving into a QuickBooks environment from desktop or from some other tool, because in the law industry, some people are actually doing their accounting in LawPay or some other tool that has nothing to do, it's not a full accounting tool. How do you make that decision about what's the right data to bring over? You know, what's too much, what's too little? It then goes into this, hey, how do we get the client to pay for it? Because there's work, and work is money, and there's some value to it. We all know it because they want it in the back end. So how do you approach that? Brandy, I'll start with you, because I know that you know, we did the work with that Texas-based firm, and, you know, we had to bring some stuff over and do manual work. Tell me about your sort of thought process of how you approach the legacy data.
Well, so I want to make sure that a whole year is in the QuickBooks account. So you're never gonna start halfway through the year. I mean, given that they were in business for the whole year, and then going down the balance sheet, you want all of those balances to be in there, and then some of the data, accounts receivable or accounts payable, and so forth. You're going to want more information than just, oh, they have an accounts receivable balance of this. You're going to want to know per client, and then as it gets to the trust accounts, you need to know the trust account balance per client and get that information all accurate as of the first of the year for the year that you are starting in QuickBooks.
Yeah, and that's important. I see Sarah and Lynda nodding their heads. Any other comments on that?
No, she did it right.
How do you get what if you have a client that's saying, I just don't care, I don't want to bring it in, you know, and they're sort of hemming and hawing?
It's your process. I mean, it's the way that I look at it is I'm owning the work. It's my work, that product that I'm putting together for you. So we have to do it right from the onset. It's not a question of if you're going to want to do it this way or not. No, this is the way it goes. Because there's no way that we can stand behind, like Brandy and all the rest of us and Lynda, to stand behind and say, yeah, we know what's in that trust account. We know what the compliance is. That would be scary that we just have dumped in numbers without any verification or validation. Yeah. I'm not going to presume that role. I'm not going to take on that risk.
Right. And it's also, especially as it relates to trust accounting, it also is compliance to the attorney and potentially lose their license. So if they start getting frugal and they really push you on this, maybe it's not even the right client, right? And I think that goes back into that setting the expectation and that sort of pre-onboarding about making sure they understand all of the steps and the costs and those types of things. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit, start with this billing data and migration prep, because it really has to do with adopting someone to LeanLaw, and I do this and know it pretty well from my side. What I mean by that is when you come into LeanLaw, you have a client and you have a matter, and this goes for any invoicing system. You have a client, a project, client, a matter, and there's nuances to it. There's someone we identify as a responsible attorney. There might be a client ID, a matter ID. There might be notes. There might be other data points that need to be brought into the billing tool. This really doesn't have to do with QuickBooks, although those clients will come over to QuickBooks at some point or be brought from QuickBooks. But there's this nuance that the attorney is going to want. And that form I actually pulled out. I'm going to share my screen real quick and just show you a little bit about, let's share this screen and pull this over. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
So these are all the data points. This is what sort of an Excel sheet might look like. And it's not overly complex, but you'll start to see things like client ID, the client name, the matter ID, the title. You're also going to get into things like who's responsible. You might get into type of billing. Is it what we call a customer billing or a sub-customer billing? And the most important thing is that this is exported from some other tool. This is exported from some other tool, and there's a back and forth that you have to go to get it right, because that is the easiest place to clean the data. Bringing it all in, just like bringing in all your sloppy chart of accounts or something like that, can sometimes be very cumbersome. So we spend a lot of time extracting data, helping the client extract data out of the old billing system, looking at it in an Excel-like file, whether it's a Google Sheet or a Google Cell, and really trimming it. And this one client that I recently worked with, it was a 3-week, 2-week back and forth process. And I kept pushing them to get it right, because once they made that decision, they're sort of have to live with the data that they get. Importing it is not complicated, right? We just hit a button and match some fields and off it goes. But once it's in the actual application, you're really stuck with it, and you have to go into records to clean it up. So that export is important. The next consideration is really over that cutover. And if you remember, we said we cut over, we bill the previous month. So in July, we bill June out of the old system. And what I do is you establish an opening balance for that client in QuickBooks. And LeanLaw maps clients over, and there's ways to do that in an automated way. The client that I was working on with Lynda and Sarah, they had thousands of clients billing at the customer level and some billing at the sub-customer level. And I literally hit a button, and LeanLaw pushed over from our tool into QuickBooks 1,000 clients, and it was like, took 3 hours, but it worked. But then you have to create those opening balances. And what I like to do, and what I coach the clients to do, is that they establish the opening balance in QuickBooks for the client, which is essentially the receivable balance from the last system, and then take a PDF of that invoice and attach it to the opening balance. And what that does is give them a historical footprint to say, where did this come from? And they have the physical invoice already tethered in QuickBooks as part of that environment. And I think that's a really important step. It's not critical, but it's super helpful if you ever go back and say, where did that number come from? That you don't have to go dig it up and try to source it from a system, especially if time passes, because that system might go offline, that system might crash, whatever it might be. So we spend a lot of time within LeanLaw helping them get their billing information. And sometimes, like the one Onboard Brandy and I did, because the clients were in desktop, they went to online, I mapped them over to LeanLaw. That was the sensible way because the clients were in QuickBooks. In another instances, because they came out, the clients were in a tool called PC Law, we mapped them into LeanLaw and then pushed them to QuickBooks. And I remember Sarah and Lynda saying, hey, we need the clients, we can't move forward. And that's the relationship that LeanLaw has to have with the accounting team, that back and forth dialogue to go there. Let's talk about training and coaching. And so training and coaching. I'm going to start with one thought, which is every time I'm with the client, when I mean the law client, I push them to push on you guys to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. The pain that I see downstream is that the accounting people, the accounting community, didn't train the staff well enough. They didn't force the subject, they didn't document, they didn't create best practices. Maybe the client didn't receive it well, but now they stumbled and said, I don't understand how to do X, Y, and Z. And then we get gook. So my question, and I'm going to start with you, Brandy, where do you start that training? How do you do it? And what kind of documentation do you provide?
I start the training almost immediately, especially if they're going to be doing anything within QuickBooks Online, and also helping them like with LeanLaw and showing them how to do things in there. But immediately it's going to start with, here's the step-by-step process of how to do it. I record videos with them, with their questions that they have and how to do it with their information in there. So yes, QuickBooks Online has that test account that you can use, but I like to use theirs and show them with the particular clients that they had a question on. I record videos, I send them to them. We also do go-to meetings, and I record those sessions and give them back to them, as well as doing screenshots with text. You know, people learn in different ways, so you try to hit them in all different methods. Yeah.
And Sarah and Lynda, what are your thoughts on it?
Sarah and I have the East Coast and the West Coast covered, and we were joking with Brandy that we might need her in the middle for to pick up the slack. But we actually do the same thing. So we started out actually with the client that we're sharing. While we were building the file, we gave them the test file and gave them the videos that were provided as pro advisors and said, here's the help videos. This is not really a training from us. You're going to get individualized training, but while you're here and you're waiting for us to do this and get it set up, go into the playground, play in there. You can't hurt anything. Once you close the test file out, you go back, it's all gone. And then they use the videos. So they can kind of start to learn these little short videos that Intuit provides us. So we start there, and then we're going to be training, and we're actually working with a client now and helping them learn Receipt Bank, because that's one of the tools we're using. And we're training her as we go along. And if Sarah's at a meeting and I see it come through Lissio, because we're on the same thing, I hop in and answer, or vice versa, because sometimes I'm having dinner and it's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the client who happens to also be on the West Coast. So Sarah, is there anything else I missed?
No, you've covered it really well, both of you actually. I think the big thing is like learning what the client's feeling is about QuickBooks Online. Have they ever experienced it? Are they new to it? How do they feel? How trepidatious are they about this whole thing? So sometimes I like to cut them loose and say, here's the test drive, go play. Or let me create fake customer and fake vendor and go in there and play with those fake titled things inside your file. I know I can clear those out. Just feel free to play with those 2 accounts. Have fun. Just, you can't mess it up too bad unless you break something or delete something, but whatever, we'll figure it out. But I think it's just also qualifying where they are, and like, kind of like Brandy and Lynda are saying, you might have to start off right on the initial where you're kind of like, look, I'm doing all this, but here's what you need to be doing now, to kind of swing into what you're saying, Jonathan, which is how to formalize in their mind, how does LeanLaw really interact with my ending product, and what does that mean? And the light bulb moments come on at different times. So you're going to see like, oh yeah, I finally got it. I'm like, oh my God, 5 times I told you, but great. Okay. So those are those moments, and they're actually really fun to have with them, especially if you're online together doing them.
So the way we approach it, and we're only looking at one small chasm of it, which is the invoicing side and the billing side. But what I coach, especially if I'm getting firms that I have to, the one challenge with LeanLaw is people adopt LeanLaw and QuickBooks Online and don't have a pro advisor, and they lean on us for accounting. So I have to like go in, and I've gone in and had to go in and, figure out trust issues and, all sorts of things inside of QuickBooks. I'm the QuickBooks guy in LeanLaw, which is strange. But the point I'm making is that what I like to do is to think about the life cycle of a client on the revenue side. And so how do they onboard? How does that, when do we connect? When does the client get over to QuickBooks? How do they receive the trust money if there's trust payments made? How do they handle that deposit? How do they do the work? What reports do they need along the way? How do then they do the invoicing piece? How do they pay that invoice from trust where applicable? What reports do they need to do? And really what you're doing is you're trying to capture all the data points within that life cycle. So you can think about it from a functional standpoint, like how do I handle AP? How do I handle payroll? That's one way, and sometimes that works. Another way is just to kind of walk them through that life cycle. And you say, explain to me how you do it today, and then you're sort of going to build that process again with this new environment. And the second piece is to really differentiate, or to be aware of the idea that in many instances, because they're touching QuickBooks in a way that maybe they hadn't touched it before. And what I mean is QuickBooks is so nimble and online and compartmentalized that people now are in QuickBooks that may not have been there before. So of course you can control and restrain, but the idea is to be very specific about what they need to do in the steps in QuickBooks, and introduce those other modules about managing the overall macro accounting. Because the invoicing piece is really important, and that's kind of driving it. But then there's the rest of this sort of financial accounting that happens, and they kind of almost need to be separated to a certain degree, because the invoicing tends to happen first. Okay, last thing, and we're at the hour, but I want to talk about this, which is validation. We use this validation piece, and so Sarah, I want you to speak to this, but to me, it's the end of the rope that validates or quantifies that you actually have things set up right. Like, how do you make sure that you did it right? And is it a report? Is it a process? Is it they got their invoices out? And then how do you go back and measure that, validate it? How do you know you're right? You got it right. That's really what I'm trying to get at.
I think 2 of the 3 areas that you just mentioned towards the end are the key parts: the process, and the validation is obviously your reconciliation, where you started, your beginning start, like kind of referencing what Brandy said. You start at the beginning of the year. I don't care that you're at the end, you know, in the middle. You start at the beginning, and then also the next validating point, and it's kind of the most rewarding point, is how kind of enlightened and happy the client is, because they have that moment of clarity of like, you mean I can finally do it this way? I don't have to go looking for 20 million things. Things will break. You just set the expectation on the onset. We're not perfect. It will break. We're going to keep rolling through it. If we need to have ongoing coaching, if we need to have ongoing services, you have that moment to help them through that. Just making sure that you are always engaged, like they know that you're always going to be there. That's what makes it all kind of come together. And then you validate it with your compliance reports, you validate it with your trust balances, you show them an overview of what it is that you're doing. And then depending on your level of engagement, you go from there. But as long as the client can understand at a basic level what it is that you're doing, they'll get the tools, they'll figure it out. And it's very intuitive. So,
Brandy, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think
she always looks at me mad because I'm like, come on, Brandy, here's the mic, go.
I think it said that there was like, I could hit the space bar or something and then mute myself quickly, but that's too new tech for me. No, I don't think I have anything else to say. I think Sarah did great.
I think that I'm going to add my one point. Within the third billing cycle, if you're still getting a lot of questions, problems, struggling, something's wrong. The first billing cycle is the hardest. So if we think about the life cycle of a professional services organization, and law in particular, the first is the most difficult, and it's going to need the most handling. The first life cycle of invoicing, right? Because they're struggling, they've got to get the money out, they've got to get the invoices out, they got to collect payments, pay invoices from trust. That's the most complicated. And that's where you really need to be prepared to give the heavy lifting, to be at their hip. By the second and third cycle, if you're still getting a lot of questions, something's not right. If they're still struggling with the process, so that's, to me, a point of validation. And we look at LeanLaw and we look at these relationships, and I get lots of questions from people in the first two cycles. If I'm still getting in the fourth and fifth, there's something wrong, meaning it's set up wrong, the end user doesn't know what's going on, and we've got to go in and dig in and fix it, because that's draining on us, right? Because we're trying to respond to it, clients irritated. The second validation for us, and I would think for you folks, and I'm going to end this soon because we're 4 minutes late, is reporting. And I say reporting in twofold. One is what happened, right? And if you can give them those accurate reports and do so efficiently, because many people are moving from an environment that's very antiquated. So reports are stagnated and old, right? They're stagnated and they're old, but they're hard to get. So they're working really hard to get this data. And you should be able to hit a button and say, boom, they're there. Or have QuickBooks automatically email them the reports. I'm onboarding a 31-person firm like next week, starting the process, and they're on desktop in LawPay. And I said, oh yeah, QuickBooks will just email those reports. She doesn't need to manually print them out. It's just like, oh my God, that can happen. So the idea is that data, when that managing partner or someone else has that data and it's accurate, that's important. And then the last point with a LeanLaw real-time data environment, that they can see things just in time. When they actually go in and start looking at data themselves, that's a validation that they're in the right platform, from my perspective, having worked with these attorneys. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I think I answered all the questions online. If you didn't, please email me directly. I asked the group two things. If there's a topic you're interested in covering, please email it to me directly, and I will build it into a meetup. We'll have another one in a month. And we're going to have a QGlue meetup. One of the meetups is going to be explicitly QGlue, and we're going to demo the product and talk about it. And that's probably 2 months away, 2 cycles away, but that's happening. The second thing is, if you have a suggestion on the format, like we used a webinar format, it was a little less interactive, but we have a lot more people online today than we have in the past. So I'm really psyched to hear your feedback and really want it. So Brandy, Sarah, and Lynda, as always, thank you so much from all of us at LeanLaw for all of your greatness and all that you do for us.
Thank you.
And to all of you in this community, I really mean this with the bottom of my heart. We made an effort about a year ago to focus in this community, and it's given me nothing but love. And I know that sounds corny, but it's really the truth. And it's really, we're right at an interesting inflection point for our company where we're really things are really starting to happen for us. And it's a lot to do with this community backing us and validating us and cheerleading for us. So thank you all. And have a great week. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.